So I imagine you're starting to see that even though it is the case that we oftentimes do a cost-benefit analysis when determining what the right thing to do is, and even though, generally speaking, all things being equal, we generally believe that actions that create the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people with the least amount of suffering, those actions are oftentimes the preferred actions. But it doesn't seem like just the greatest good for the greatest number is sufficient to determine whether or not a given action is moral or immoral. Because it can allow us, if that's our only criteria, we can justify some things that we ordinarily regard as kind of horrific, right? So for example, if all that matters is the greatest good for the greatest number, a utilitarian might be able to make the argument that the ethical thing to do is to enslave tall people. So let's say we could enslave anybody over 6'5". Anybody over 6'5" is going to be forced to perform labor for free for the benefit of all of those people who are less than 6'5". Okay? And if we calculate out, as a good utilitarian would do, all of the pain units that those enslaved people and their families will be experiencing, and all of the happiness units that those who are benefiting from this forced free labor would experience, we can see that it might be possible to justify the morality of slavery. And that's kind of a head scratcher. Okay? And when we do our calculation, we're going to want to take into account the psychological stress that non-enslaved people are going to experience, knowing that they're benefiting from enslaved people, for sure. But it's theoretically possible that we could calculate this out in a way that makes it appear as though enslaving tall people would produce the greatest good for the greatest number, and therefore, from a utilitarian perspective, be the morally right action. And you can sort of see this dramatized by the example of, let's say you have a homeless person who has no friends, no family, nobody depends on this person. This person has no attachments to anybody. They have no future prospects because they suffer from some mental or physical disability. They're just barely chugging along in their lives. Well, you have this doctor who needs to be able to do some human experimentation on somebody. And so what if this doctor kidnaps this homeless person and in secret does this experimentation, which the doctor thinks is likely to bring about a cure for an illness that untreated kills millions of people, okay, like cancer or something like that. Well, if this doctor's doing this in secret, then there's no psychological stress that the population is going to be suffering. So really, the only thing that matters here is the pain units that this unattached homeless person is going to experience compared against the benefit that all of these people who would ordinarily die painful deaths are going to reap now that there's a cure for their condition because of the experimentation on this human being. And it seems pretty clear from a utilitarian perspective, this could be justifiable. Or the idea of 5 transplants. We have 5 people that need organ transplants. One needs an eye, one needs a heart, one needs a lung, and so on and so forth. From the utilitarian perspective, it seems like if we have a doctor who's willing to do it, we should take one person and harvest all of those organs. Because we're going to create happiness units in 5 people that are going to be much greater than the happiness units in any one individual person collectively. Okay? And again, it's like, well, the utilitarian thinking here seems to be leading me down some roads that I'm not quite sure I'm comfortable going down. Because if it really is true that what matters the most is the greatest good for the greatest number, then sacrificing the one for the benefit of the many seems like it's a morally justifiable thing to do. In fact, it might even be morally justifiable to do this against the will, the desires of the one. And that's going to make some folks a little uncomfortable.